What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT, here with my college football Week 7 best bets, my 5 best bets of the week. Right now, we're coming off a clean 5-0 sweep last week. We kicked Vegas' ass. They could not stop us. We cashed in on our 5-leg parlay with all of our picks, and we're looking to keep this momentum rolling in Week 7. And speaking of rolling, we're rolling with the Alabama Crimson Tide as a 21-point favorite at home against South Carolina. Look, I know that they had the worst loss, arguably, in program history against Vandy, but South Carolina, they got to go on the road in Tuscaloosa to beat Bama. It's always hard to get a win against Bama on the road in this environment. And plus, they got blown out by Ole Miss. Kalen DeBoer, the head coach of Alabama, expect him to have this team ready to play this week because that Vanderbilt loss was the worst thing that could happen for any team that has Bama on their schedule from this point out, because they're going to be motivated. They needed that loss against Vandy. It sort of was a reality check. They were riding off that emotional high off that win against Georgia. South Carolina, they're a one-dimensional team. They don't have a efficient offense because their quarterback play has not been that good. They can only move the ball on offense by running the football. If you shut down Rocket Sanders in that rushing attack, South Carolina struggles. They do got a good defense. They could give Alabama's offense a little bit of trouble, but Alabama has scored 30 points or more in pretty much every game this year. And unless the Beamer boys can, dominate on special teams, come away with a few turnovers to help that offense out, there's no chance that Alabama doesn't cover this 21-point spread. This is a great bounce-back spot for the Tide at home. Next up, I love Colorado as a 4-point underdog at home against Kansas State. I know a lot of people don't really like betting on Colorado that much. I don't neither, but the thing about Colorado that makes them a great team to bet on this week is because you're going up against a Kansas State team that, yeah, they got a solid pass rush, but not a great pass rush. And people keep judging this Colorado squad based off how badly they lost to Nebraska. But here's the thing about that Nebraska loss. Nebraska has arguably the best defensive line in all of college football. They're like top 5, top 10 in the nation in sacks per game. Kansas State, they're nowhere as dominant as what Nebraska is up front, and they got a really bad secondary that gives up a lot of yards. And if you can't stop Colorado's passing attack by generating pressure on Shedeur Sanders, you're going to be in a close game with this team. They got 4 future NFL wide receivers. We know about Travis Hunter. You got LaJohntay Western, Will Shepard, Jimmy Horn Jr. You're going to be having a hard time finding any team in America that has the kind of depth in the secondary to cover all 4 of those wide receivers. And the Big 12 isn't really all that well known for having great trench play. Avery Johnson, the quarterback for Kansas State, he's been pretty solid, but he hasn't been that consistent throwing the football this year. You're going up against a really stingy Colorado secondary that does have the ability to generate turnovers. And I just feel like with Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter being on the same team, 2 future top 5 picks in next year's draft, it makes it incredibly difficult to stop this CU team if you aren't able to generate pressure on Shedeur Sanders consistently. Kansas State does have a few okay pass rushers, but nothing compared to what Nebraska had. That's why I love Colorado to cover that 4-point spread as underdogs, and I probably would like them to win this game outright as well. Missouri, I love them as a 27-point favorite on the road against UMass. They're coming off an incredible, disturbing loss against Texas A&M, and expect them to bounce back against one of the worst teams in all of the FBS. UMass is one of the worst offenses in college football. Their defense is just as bad as well. They rank near the bottom of college football in every statistical category on both sides of the ball. Outside of their pass defense, Missouri should be able to cover this game by halftime. How about Tennessee at home as a 15.5-point favorite against Florida. I know that Florida has had Tennessee's number a lot over the last couple of decades. They upset them last year, but Florida had the home field advantage in last year's matchup. This year, they got to go on the road to Rocky Top against one of the best teams that Tennessee has had in the last 2 decades. They got a really great defense. They got a lot of depth and talent on that defensive line. We know how good the offense can be. Last week was a little bit of a stinker for the Vols. You know, they got upset on the road against Arkansas, but that's just one of those games that you just got to say it's just college football madness, because the Tennessee team that we saw against Arkansas is not the Tennessee team that we're going to see for the majority of this season. And I love betting against Florida because Billy Napier is one of the worst head coaches in all of college football. If I had to lose money betting against somebody, I'd rather lose it betting against Billy Napier. This team is not well coached. Yeah, they're riding on a 2-game win streak, but they haven't beaten nobody good. They beat a bad UCF team. They beat the worst team in the SEC in Mississippi State. The last time Florida played a quality team, they got smacked at home by Texas A&M. They had a redshirt freshman at quarterback, by the way, in that game, and the game was pretty much over at halftime. Every time you watch Florida play defensively, they got a lot of coverage bust. They don't really communicate well in the secondary. They don't have a good pass rush at all. They can't stop the run. Offensively, they are capable of being able to put up some points on this Tennessee defense, but their offensive line isn't that good. I expect Tennessee's front to take over this game, and I love the Vols to win in blowout fashion. I know that Florida has dominated this rivalry, but, you know, with how bad Florida has been in games like this against quality teams, they've normally struggled because the coaching hasn't been that good. And I expect for Tennessee to win this game pretty easily. And lastly, I'm rolling with UNLV as a 19-point favorite against Utah State. Utah State is not that good. UNLV, they're coming off a loss to Syracuse last week. And although they did lose that game, they did show a lot of fight. This is an offense that has a lot of firepower. They got a really good quarterback ever since the Sluka dude ended up quitting on the team. That actually did them a favor because they got a quarterback who can actually throw the football pretty efficiently and accurately. He also has good wills as well, so he can extend plays. They got good receivers, and they got a great defense. And although they lost to Syracuse, I still love for UNLV to get that 12th seed, being the best G5 team in college football. I know a lot of people are going to say that it's Boise State, but Boise State doesn't have a complete team. You take Ashton Gentry off that team, and they wouldn't be as good as what they were. UNLV, they don't have a player of the caliber of what an Ashton Gentry is, which I think makes them better because they're not overly reliant on one player. They're a well-coached team by Barry Odom. They got a lot of talent on both sides of the football. And if they do end up eventually playing Boise State this year for the Mountain West title, I would take UNLV to win. This is without a doubt the best G5 squad in all of the FBS. They got several Power 5 wins, and anytime they go up against other G5 foes, they normally dominate them. Utah State, they got a really bad offense, especially when you look at their quarterback situation. They got Spencer Petras, a transfer from Iowa. He was arguably the worst QB in FBS last year, and they also got the dude and Bryson Barnes, remember number 16 at Utah last year, the pig farmer who helped lead them to an upset over Caleb Williams and the Trojans. Yeah, those are their two options at quarterback. I love fading teams that have bad quarterback situations and bad offenses, and that's why I love UNLV to cover that 19-point spread as a favorite. And this is it for my college football Week 7 best bets. Give your best bets down in the comment section down below. What teams are you going to be rolling with this week? I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Before you leave up on out of here, do me a favor. If you enjoyed, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon so you don't miss when we go live and drop new content. Remember that we're not just a YouTube channel. You can find this episode and all of our previous ones wherever you get your podcast from: Apple, Spotify, Amazon. The JT Sports Podcast is available. Give us a 5-star review. Share the pod with your friends, family members, and acquaintances. If you enjoy, follow us on Instagram at JT Sports _ and on X at JT Sports __. I appreciate you guys for tuning in, and I will see you guys shortly with another episode.